Is this the end?
I guess so. Oh wait, there's a bunch more.
Hello everyone, today I'm going to be going over everything we saw that was important in the episode Buddy's Book. Now there was actually quite a few things, lore-wise and story-wise, that this episode introduced to us or kind of confirmed or made us have more questions. I'll probably be doing a segment like this every week for every new episode we get, so tell me what you think of this. It's pretty unscripted, although I do have some notes that I would like to share with you, because actually there was quite a lot that we learned from this episode, even though it didn't really seem like it, except for a few moments. If there is any moments I missed, you can definitely write that down in the comments below. There are some things that I wasn't really sure if I should put in here, and I kind of left it out, but maybe you guys think they're important, or it's some speculation that you want to make. So let's begin. First of all, some people said right in the beginning when we first see Lion and Steven and Connie all going through the teleporting, because that's a power of Lion, one of the sounds that we hear actually sounds quite a bit like the sound we heard from the diamonds and the corruption weapon. So I want to know what you thought. Did you think that was just a coincidence that they sound kind of similar, or you think that's alluding to something that I might mention later in the video? Then pretty soon after that, we see that the librarian is actually a girl that we saw in Restaurant Wars. And we also get to see young Buck Dewey, and I actually hope to one day see all the teenagers as children at one point or another. An interesting little tidbit that we learned in this episode is that Connie is going to be in the 7th grade, which is pretty cool. So she's going to be a middle schooler, and it seems like she's already having to study a lot, which is pretty sad. But, she wants to get ahead herself, which is good to see. Once Steven finds the book, we can see that the illustrations of the Crystal Gem Temple, which is probably a fusion, is actually concept art by this guy named Guy Davis, who actually worked on the show. Next up, I'm going to talk about a big point of this episode, and it's actually about the geography that we see on the map that Pearl gives to Buddy about all the dangerous places, and in fact, it's a very different Earth that we see on here. In fact, we actually got confirmation of a lot of places, where they were, but also we got to see how different the Earth is in this universe. We saw that the Strawberry Battlefield was located in Norway, and you know what, a really cool, interesting tidbit that maybe it was intentional, maybe not, but since all these giant probably fusion weapons were located in this place, it is possible that Norse mythology of all the gods and stuff came from this battle because people thought, gods were fighting there, which pretty much that was exactly what was happening, because really powerful beings were fighting there and lost their lives and things like that. Next, we get to see the crystal gems designs for this episode, hundreds of years ago, and it seems that they were directly taken from the old photograph in Too Many Birthdays, and that means Amethyst had long hair, because if you remember, in that photograph, she had her hair like that, so some people were like, how is that possible? But if this is probably not exactly what they look like, but Steven was imagining this, and so because he only knew that photograph, that's why all the gems look like that, including Amethyst. An interesting note that really took me by surprise was that the X's on the map, or the dots I should say, match up pretty well with those from the episode It Could Have Been Great, where we see a map of the Earth and all the locations of like spires and gem structures and places that humans shouldn't go. So they match up almost exactly, which is quite amazing. An interesting tidbit is that on the east coast of the US, there's kind of a triangle of locations, which may coincidentally be where the Bermuda Triangle is, and maybe the gems are the ones that started the rumor or the myth to keep people away from that area, because it's supposed to be really dangerous and you should not go there, just like the gems said. You'll notice on these maps that a lot of the Earth is different, and some countries are distorted or just are totally gone from the map or wiped out altogether. And you can see that there is also a structure in South America that is not present on Pearl's map, but is on the other one that we saw, and It Could Have Been Great, which is like, why is that so? There's been a lot of speculation about that, but I haven't really been able to come to an answer at the moment. Some of the structures have been matched up to where they're located, and it's pretty much confirmed that this is where they're located on that Earth, and I will include the confirmed ones right here. Also, something fun to notice is that it looks like Garnet and Pearl ride off on a penny farthing, which is some kind of old-timey bike thing. And it's just really funny how they do that. Totally random, totally Steven thinking of all this stuff up in his head. Onto something pretty surprising, we can see that the Heaven Beetle's house is different here. Did somebody actually come and update it and put new stuff in it? Because we saw in Giant Woman that that house was nothing like that. Or, well, I mean, it was really similar actually, but obviously back then they didn't have any video game consoles in it, which it did in the present day. Or maybe Steven was just imagining this and this is how he thought it would look like. But really, why does it have consoles in it? It doesn't make sense once you think about it. Who was putting it in there? One of the other crystal gems? Or did the Beatles make it themselves? Maybe we'll get an answer to that one day. Later on, we see the sea spire, and it actually, if you look closely in the background or on one of the pillars, you will notice that there are lions on the pillars. So that's kind of a theme of this episode. And before, when we saw the sea spire a couple times ago, it was kind of blurry, or you couldn't really tell what those figures were. So I wonder if they were hiding that on purpose, or they just decided to show a closer up of it now for some reason. One thing that I think is very important, especially in particular for me, is that we got to see the mural from Serious Steven again, which is, if some of you know, if you remember when I first started making videos, that was actually the first video I made, and I have brought it up a couple times, but the show hasn't. So since it's been so long, people are like, maybe they just brushed it off. Maybe, since it was made really early in the series, that they just decided that it didn't matter anymore because they changed up the lore since then, because the story is constantly evolving, and maybe that had some importance back then but doesn't now. But since they brought it back exactly as it was shown in Serious Steven, there may be some significance of it. I might talk about that later, or some other theories about that soon. Then another sketch that we see, which is also pretty important, is that we see an abandoned palanquin, which might be Blue Diamond's, which means maybe Blue Diamond went to Earth. Was she fighting there, or was she just watching over things? Like we saw in the answer, she didn't really do much except give orders. But it was definitely abandoned, as we can tell. Maybe, most likely because Homeworld had to flee before the corruption weapon came down. This might be important in the future, just bringing it up all of a sudden. So maybe we'll get to see more Blue Diamond or Blue Pearl. I've also heard some speculation that that palanquin was not Blue Diamonds, but was instead Pink Diamonds, because the palanquins have some slight differences in them. I think maybe it's either the number of legs or something like that, or maybe not the legs, but the number of walls on the palanquin. So what if it was Pink Diamonds? Because she may have actually been more of a head-on leader, like she told her. She didn't just tell him what to do, she also went down to Earth. Actually, unlike Blue Diamond, so maybe she was there when that happened, and stuff happened to her, which we'll talk about soon. But maybe that was hers, and she was the one down on Earth, and because of that, she was in contact with Rose, and bad things happened to her. Now, I'm gonna kind of skip Amethyst because we don't really learn too much, but what I really want to talk about is Rose and her 7 lions. We see that she has both male and female lions. And maybe because of this, we'll soon get about Lion's backstory, which is something that we have been wanting ever since pretty much the beginning of season 1. Also interesting to note that Rose may have never been poofed, which is why we always see her pretty much always, maybe not in that old painting, but besides that, we always see her in the same dress. I need to go back and look in that painting. I always forget. Is she wearing that same dress, or is she wearing something over that? But also one other thing that I want to mention is, like we've seen a couple of times, like in the extended intro and in some other instances, her eyes are covered, which I wonder why they're doing that with her and not very often with the other gems, especially for the amount of times that we've seen Rose and her eyes have been covered like that. Like, especially before somebody meets her, we always see her with her eyes covered, or, what is she hiding? That's what we really want to know. And maybe we'll learn what she's hiding very soon. Here is a small but very interesting detail. You'll know that the lion that was licking Buddy's face actually had a heart-shaped nose, like the lion that Steven has. Now, is this Steven's lion? That's probably the case, assuming that, this lion has lived for that amount of time. But we only see this lion in one shot, which is really interesting. We see the other 2 male lions, and they have regular triangle-shaped noses. Well, I'm assuming that's regular for lions in this world. But the one male lion that had the heart-shaped nose, we only see once. So were they trying to kind of like hide it a little bit, just for those who are really paying attention? That's our lion. Maybe that was him when he was a lot younger. Who knows? assuming that that one lion that licked Buddy's face was in fact Steven's lion, we can see that at one point he wasn't magical, which brings up a ton of questions. One of them is, where did Rose keep Bismuth's bubble and all her other stuff? Maybe she just kept it in the castle, sandcastle or something, and she didn't let the other gems know about all that. She had all that secret stuff, because we know she kept a lot of secrets. And when she finally somehow created Steven's lion, she put all the stuff in there to keep it safe from the other gems while she would be gone, obviously, and Steven would take her place. So there are a couple of theories that come up with this, which we may expand more on later, but one of them is that Rose was experimenting on how to heal corrupted or shattered gems, and one of the results that when she worked on one of the lions was the lion that we know that Steven owns, or is his pet at the very least. So which would explain why that actual sandcastle was trying to, if you remember when he first met Lion, it was trying to save Steven because Rose was kind of in charge of that castle, and that's where we first met Lion in the first place. So he was waiting all this time for Rose to come back, and instead they got Steven. Of course he accepts him. Another theory that I like, going back to Pink Diamond once again, is that the shards of Pink Diamond were merged with that lion, and therefore resulting in the pink lion that we all know. So it was just maybe showing, maybe this was a proof of concept that she could merge herself with an organic being. A shard could merge with organic and create something new, which later on we see that, pretty much the same concepts with Steven merging, herself with organic life and making Steven. So maybe she had this idea for a long time, and Lion was a proof of concept. Honestly, what this episode probably proves to us even more now than ever is that there is so much Rose did not tell the crystal gems, and especially Pearl, which is really sad to see because Pearl trusted Rose so much, and it just keeps getting sadder and sadder. The more we learn about Rose, the more we see that she trusted her own team, her own family, if I could say so that much. So I'm also still wondering, one thing that this episode, brings up, makes me think about once again, is the chest in Lion's Mane, and basically Lion himself. The chest in Lion's Mane is the last mystery we have in the main after we learned about Bismuth. So I wonder if that will have Pink Diamond, which is a theory I've heard a lot, in the shards inside. Maybe the remaining shards of Pink Diamond are in that chest. Some went into Lion, and the rest went in there for safekeeping, so nobody would open them. I don't know if Steven will open it anytime soon. He'll probably respect his mother's private property, even though it's technically his now. But he didn't seem to want to open Bubble Bismuth, so I don't know if he'd want to find a way to open the chest unless he was really desperate or something. Maybe he'll end up accidentally opening it, just like with Bismuth, but we'll see in time. And this is a pretty good episode, I think, in my opinion. I love how we learned a lot more about the lore of the world, how it's shaped, and how actual places that we see are not all in the United States. For some reason I was thinking they were, but it really isn't. They're all over the earth, showing that, the warp pads really are warping them far, which is kind of weird to think about. Like, I thought they were just going to be really close to each other, but in fact, no. Things are actually pretty far spread out across the earth, which is interesting to see. I hope they get to explore these places more, not just the warp pads, but other places as well. So those were a lot of the lore tidbits that I found during the episode. If you have any others that you think I missed, or you would like me to talk about maybe in a future episode, if they reference back to that, I will definitely get to that. So I just wanted to say thanks for watching, and tell me what you think of this new little series of videos. Instead of doing reviews, I think I'll do this instead. It interests me a lot more than just doing a straight on review. Because I want to, it's like a really nice recap of what we learned during the episode. So thanks for watching.